And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 82. The old Trent Frederick. The Trent Frederick beating that bag out of Brandon Tanev episode. I am Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm okay. How are you doing?
Okay. Only okay. What's the...
It's a slow news day, so we're really going to be scrapping the bottom of the barrel here to get you guys some content for tonight's episode. So just okay.
Just okay. Yeah, there's not a lot to talk about today. And what's funny is all these things came out mid-game and in the second period. I was actually doing work for NCAA.com. Actually, I was in charge. They put me in charge for the night, which is bananas. And I was just kind of taking a look at Twitter during the game, taking a little break, and I saw the Rask news, and I said, "Oh boy, mid-game,
not great,
mid-game." Yeah, that is quite the time for that news to drop. Now, granted, it was reported by Fluto Shinzawa at The Athletic. It's not like he's like, "Oh, I'm going to wait till the end of the game." I'm just going to wait. But so we'll jump right into it because this was going to take up the first portion of today's show. I'm not shocked by it, and I'll tell you why I'm not shocked by it. The reason I'm not shocked by it is because it felt like when Swayman got called up back to Boston when they were out west, didn't you have that feeling like
something's a little off?
Something's off here. Is that the same feeling you got?
Yeah, more or less. Not that I thought retirement was going to be at the top of the list, but it's not something where even if it's just a nagging thing where you're shaking the rust off. I still thought going into it, so what we talked about on Bruins Beat about our predictions that that Swayman was going to get maybe 5 starts over this next kind of stretch here, and
you end up being right.
He will probably get 5 starts, right? So, but did not expect it to be again like a red flag in terms of retirement, but definitely something that's worth monitoring because something that did seem off even when Swayman first got called up.
Yeah, and that was the thing, and I think again, he's not spoken. The Bruins haven't said much about this yet. Cassidy kind of said he'll leave that up to Rask. But from Rask's perspective, you have to think he's 34. He was probably playing in the game against the Ducks or the Jets, and afterwards he sort of started to feel that pain, and he was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't as good. Because remember after the Philly game, it was I feel great. I felt great out there. Mm-hmm. I think this was more of I tweet something. I don't feel great. Why am I doing this? I was retired. What is the point to this? And we'll get in later to why this wasn't the worst move by the Bruins. Mm-hmm. But with Rask probably retired, I don't see him coming back from this if this is true, which I believe it is. Comes down to what's his legacy here. And that's a weird question because...
Interesting question.
It's an interesting question because the stats are very, very, very... He was this elite goalie who really was one of the main reasons why the Bruins have been a consistent force since 2013. I mean, in 2010 even. And I think, the body of work is terrific and incredible. He was elite. Jay Fresh tweeted the thing out today about how in the past, since 2007, he's like second in goals saved above average, if that was the stat.
Yeah, I think only Carey Price was ahead of him. So
Carey Price went ahead of him. And so there's that aspect of it. But then there's this aspect of a lot of Bruins fans look at it and say, well, he's a quitter. And, he doesn't win the big games. And I think it's tough because he's elite. And I don't think you're going to see a guy like him roll through here for a long time. Even with Swayman being very good, I don't know if you can't. It's so hard to replicate Rask.
Yeah.
And I think just like I always said when Krejci left, people would realize how fortunate the Bruins were to have 2 centers. I think with this being the end of the Rask era, people are going to realize, damn, maybe the Bruins were actually kind of in a good spot there with Rask for a little bit.
You would hope so, Evan. I mean, it's also it really does suck that if it does end like this, that it's going to be that game against Anaheim's the last time you see him out there. It's very anticlimactic. I'm not saying that it was going to be they're going to win a cup and he goes out on top, like that would have been the peak. But even just not able to see this season through and his comeback kind of coming up short, it's really unfortunate. But it's also just very fitting for just the entire Rask legacy that he leaves with just the discourse once again. just ripping apart Twitter right now over, Rask's legacy and what have you. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head that he's still an elite goalie that, as you said, same with Krejci. I think people are going to realize in short order just how much the Bruins benefited from just having a steady elite goaltender year in and year out, and how important that is. It was the timing on it was wild yesterday too, because the Bruins were rolling in that first period. During the first intermission, Fluto Shinzawa's report comes out about Rask, and then immediately Denheinen scores 2 goals, and that second goal, holy cow, not great. I think that's
No.
also one of these things where I think you start getting a reality check of just how, steady Rask was. That there's been plenty of times over the course of a season when Rask was the number one guy where he'd go through rough stretches, or there'd be a goal where you'd be like, kind of wanted that one back. But how often was that? Like every 8, 9, 10 games, you'd have one where you're like, oh, And
Yeah.
again, timing is a lot
It'd
that
be a shot
dictates.
from the point that got
Yeah,
through a screen,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
he was in position for it or
And
something like that.
usually it depends on just what the time. If it's you're already up 5-1, what have you. But if usually it feels like those goals always came like during a tie or what have you, so that it makes them even worse. But you see like goals like that one, the Heinen second goal against Swayman. When you got league average goaltending, those happen a lot more often. You start noticing it. You start like even uh like Linus Olmark's been playing a lot better, but you still see like people in comments being like, I don't trust him as much. He's not as like steady on his feet. He's still like these rebounds. That happens when you've got not a top 10, top 5 goalie in there year in and year out. And you're starting to notice it now. Like that's how it is. And who knows, how, Swayman and Olmark build off of this. Maybe now that they know they're the top 2 guys, they kind of roll with it. Swayman, even though he's kind of struggled a bit, still has plenty of potential. So who knows? Maybe the Bruins will be in good shape moving forward. But when you look back at Rask and what his legacy is, we could talk for about 5 hours about his legacy and the pros and cons. I still think beyond what the narrative people want to say about him being a quitter or not being able to deliver in those top moments, which again, we'll go down the rabbit hole, but look at that game 7. Maybe watch it again. I don't know why you would want to watch that game 7, but watch who showed up in that game and tell me who you think was going to be the deciding factor in that one when Joakim Nordstrom and Marcus Johansson were your best players. But even like this, coming up short with his comeback, I think it was Logan Mullen who tweeted it from Nesson that, this narrative about him being a quitter. The guy very easily could have just walked away last year, went through months upon months of rehab over a pretty shitty injury, especially for a goalie. That takes a long time to get back up to speed. Got through that, got through rehab, said back in August that he was going to take like a league minimum deal just to come back and play with his teammates, and did that. Was true to his word about only, paying a $1 million contract. And unfortunately, things just went south. Like, he's a 34-year-old goalie. It's a tough procedure to come back from. Again, same with the playoff results. He's going to get compared to Tim Thomas in that way that, well, Tim Thomas had the thing. And, well, Tim Thomas is also a friggin' freak. Like, it's unfortunate for Rask that he's held to the same standard as a guy who had like an all-time playoff run in 2011. That's the situation it is, but that doesn't, I think, discount from the fact that Rask has been a franchise pillar for this team for over a decade, all-time winningest goalie, and it's just really unfortunate if this is kind of the way it ends up, where it seemed like he was looking forward to one last run, and unfortunately, just his body doesn't seem to cooperate with what he was looking to do out there on the ice.
Yeah, I think the tough thing, that the everlasting tough part of it is, he never did get the cup as the starter. And I think that if that would have maybe changed all of the things, all the narratives,
Yes,
and all that stuff would have went out the
absolutely.
window. And I think that, I don't want to bring this up for people listening, but 2019, like that was sort of the issue with that. Like Chara lifting the cup with the broken jaw would have been like, statue worthy, but Rask winning would have kind of changed the whole narrative in the city about him. There's only one game I look back on, and this is off the top of my head, so maybe I'm missing a game or two. There's only one big game that I look back at Rask and go, would have liked some more saves there. And this is never brought up by anybody, but it was Game 4 against the Blackhawks in 2013. It was 6-5 the final in overtime. And that's a game when, like, you can look back and say, well, I would have liked to saved out of the goalie. Now, granted, Rask was unconscious in 2013 in that playoff run. Like, people forget
That Pittsburgh series was unreal.
Insane. 13 and 19 again, like, was the main reason the Bruins got to that point. And granted, that's one game. right? I mean, Thomas had some bogus ones. I mean, it's funny, I think it's weird how history can do things, but obviously the Bruins won in 2011, so I'm not taking anything away. But if they lost 2011, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look back at that Stanley Cup final, look back at game 2, right? Chara obviously
Yep.
in overtime was terrible, but what was Tim Thomas doing in the net?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are little things like that. And I think that's kind of why it's unfair that Rask is compared to Tim Thomas. We've kind of talked about this a lot in the sense that Thomas was out of position like all the time. That's why there were all those crazy saves. He was diving
Mm-hmm.
around the crease, was because he was out of position. So I don't know.
I mean, I think just kind of going off that, just we've talked about this before with most of our, arguments where it seems like there's two very passionate sides to it. There should be like a common answer in the middle, which is you should just be happy that you had Tim Thomas and Tuukka Rask back to back for over close to 2 decades in net as your steadying presence. And now, again, who knows? Maybe we'll be looking at this in May, and Ullmark and Strayman have locked in, and Strayman's your goalie of the future. That's great, but if not, you're in for a rude awakening as to what league average or even above average goaltending is, because you've had elite goaltending for almost 2 decades now.
Has any other team had this level of goaltending? The only thing I can think of is the Lightning with Ben Bishop and then Andrei Vasilevsky. That's the closest I can think.
Ranges, Lundqvist to Shesterkin right now.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Which
but
again,
I mean,
does not happen often though.
No, and that's the thing. And I mean, like with 2 goalies where you get 2 back-to-back, like legit starters. And Thomas kind of just came out of that was totally out of left field. We always do this where you kind of compare to different Boston athletes, and Rask, I think, is one of the greats. I know people are going to think, oh, he never won anything. Well, there's a lot of Boston athletes who didn't win anything. And the closest I can think of, and maybe I'm wrong about this, maybe people can kind of dispute me on this, and there's only one area that they differ, but it was Pedro. Because Pedro was dominant in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
Had the 2013 Grady Little leaves him in. And then what did I say? Did I say 2003? Did I say 2014?
Did you?
I don't even know. I said a different year than it was, but 2003. Grady Little doesn't take him out, and then in 2004 he has the rough outing against the Yankees, but they end up winning.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that whole thing. But he seemed like someone who I guess they could be comparable. They were elite. They couldn't win for a little while. And again, Rask was on the doorstep numerous times, or at least twice. So. Weird legacy. Do you have any guys that you would compare him to? I mean,
there's been plenty of guys over the years that have been fantastic that didn't win. I mean, he's not the tier of Ted Williams, but Ted Williams didn't win shit. You want to talk about that? Ted Williams went to one World Series and hit like 190 in it because they did.
It was under 200.
What was it like the Boudreaux shift? I think it was, which greatest hitter that couldn't hit out of a shift. But I got there's gonna be a lot of pissed off comments if I do that. But I don't know. He didn't win shit. So if you want to start going to the Rask discourse, we'll go back to the 1940s and 50s. But I digress.
1940s and 50s.
Yeah,
all the old commenters.
The greatest hitter that ever lived couldn't hit out of a shift. It's like in the 50s when Bob Cousy did the defenders were like, I can't stop this guy. Like, just get on the bus. It's that was Ted Williams when he saw his shift. It's like Babe Ruth when he saw a curveball for the first time. And he's like, I'm done.
I'm done. I can't do this. This is ridiculous. But it's like the TikTok sound where it's like, oh, great heavens. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
I can't handle this. But yeah, I mean, again, I to me, Rask is up there as one of the greats. Number retired? I think he should.
Probably won't, but it'll be one of those ones where it's like Rick Middleton, where it's going to be down the road. Again, he probably had to win a cup to. Again, there's also been a lot of very good goaltenders, and they just don't get the numbers retired by the Bruins. So we'll see what happens. I think he's got a deserving case, but I think it could be the same thing as like Krejci, where it's like you have to look back down the road. Krejci will come back when he's like 65, and you'd be like, why didn't we do this a long time ago? He already got
that's true.
33 and 37, and probably 63 up there.
Yeah, I don't think Rask
a lot longer.
Yeah, I don't think Rask is an automatic for it, but I think he has a case. I think he's got a case for it.
I'm sure he'll be around quite a bit, though. He'll be at Buff's Pub, having his buffalo tenders and all that. Buffalo wings. I don't want to disrespect Tuukka by saying he's a buffalo tenders guy, but I'm sure he'll be around Boston quite a bit.
Yeah, you'll see him out and about. People will see him. They can be nice to him. For us, just be nice to him. The big question, obviously, is the Bruins decide to bring Rask back. There's no real regret in this. That's the funny thing. This was the whole point of the deal. Yes. They get him league minimum for a year, mid-season. This is not a loss. They tried. It didn't work. Nah.
It's literally It's literally a low risk, high reward situation that didn't pan out. Like again, it's a tough hit for the Bruins because I do think they were going into this thinking that a healthy, locked in Rask is the way to realize the true ceiling of this team. So definitely a step back because now you're handing the keys to Olmark and Swayman, or two guys who have not played in a play, or haven't started a playoff game. That is, so there's a lot of uncertainty there. But from the Bruins' perspective, if you bring back Rask for that cheap, and the only situation that if you looked at one guy who maybe didn't benefit from it, it's from Swayman. But we had this conversation. Like I even saw it like yesterday after Swayman didn't play that well, where it's like, well, he got sent down. You don't think that hurt his confidence? Like such a weak ass, like lame ass argument, like there that Swayman gets sent down for what I think was it 5 games, and all of a sudden his confidence is shot to shit. Like again,
Suddenly can't stop the puck.
we've talked about this before of how few even premier legit goalies when they come up through the ranks have a linear path to the NHL. It's not the case. Usually you're up and down, up and down. You're fighting for minutes. You have to fight for a backup spot somewhere along the line. Like if we've, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but if Swayman's path to the NHL now is starting 10 games as a true rookie last year, starting opening night this year, and spending all of 5 games down in Providence, I think he's going to be okay. And if it did, then there's a bigger issue there than being sent down to Providence. Like I think he's going to be fine. So like that was the only person who maybe didn't benefit from Rask coming back. But even if Rask stayed healthy, and the worst thing is that Swayman spends an extra 2 months down in Providence getting steady number one reps, and he's good to go next year. Sound like a pretty good idea, pretty good plan. So as complicated and as jarbled as people make out the goalie situation is, or the Bruins walking that kind of tightrope, they make this move 10 times out of 10 again. If with what the risk was, which wasn't a whole lot, especially if
Yeah.
Rask was going to be healthy and at that cost.
I mean, again, if it was something like 3 million or 3.5 or 4, then like that you can get into that. Like, what's the this you knew this could have happened, but it's for league. Like, what's the loss in this? I mean, again, I don't see the horribleness of this. It's fine. Like as you said, low risk, high reward, and it was tiny risk, and it didn't work out. So be it. Speaking of things that didn't work out, the Montreal Canadiens have reportedly just fired head coach Dominique Ducharme. So
Yes,
there goes that
shocking.
season. That season continues to get better and better for them.
Yes.
That's terrific. Speaking of news that we're waiting on, and this will probably be already, like, I think this podcast will be out, and they will have already announced the suspension. They have not announced it yet. But Brad Marchand was offered an in-person hearing, which is like bad, right? I mean, that's like, I guess that's like if you get in trouble at school as a kid and you have to either go to the principal's office or you meet with like the superintendent and your parents. That's like, I guess if the parents
when
get called
the
in.
parents get called, then you are
you're
up the
mega
creek.
fucked.
Yeah,
You are in a real situation. So as people don't know, Marchand punched Jari in the face, and then the ref was holding him back, and he stuck his stick right in his chest. Right at the end of the game, right as the
in garbage time.
Garbage time. Garbage happens.
Damn it. Happen again.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Anyways, it feels like this is going to be over 5 games, right?
I think so. And I mean, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get 5+ games of an in-person hearing, but put 2 and 2 together, right? I mean, it's just a situation where the Bruins we're going to get into what another guy who's going to probably be out for the next little while for the Bruins, which at that point, Marchand was fully cognizant of the fact that, Patrice Bergeron exited that game. You need him out there. He's the next man up as your leader. And to put yourself in that spot when the game was already decided off of a play that the league's ready and willing to drop the hammer on you, considering his rap sheet. Like, you got to be better in that situation. I don't care if you saw some people say that Jari, I think he speared like Coyle like right before that, and obviously him and Marchand were going back and forth a little bit. Marchand denied Jari from flipping that puck into the stands, which was funny, but regardless of all those things, you still can't put yourself in that situation. And people will talk about the fact that, Marcus Foligno, I think, need Adam Lowry in the head yesterday, and he didn't get it in person. Like, you can go down the rabbit hole and complain about Department of Player Safety and how it's, you spin the wheel to what the judgment's going to be. again, put 2 and 2 together with Marchand with the history he has. He's a repeat offender even before, this season where he's already been suspended once off of that Ekman Larson slew foot, which we were, I think, pretty surprised about. You're already in the league's crosshairs. So why are you putting yourself in that position where the league is going to throw the book at you at any chance they get? And you made it awfully easy for them with kind of that outburst against Jari.
Don't you feel like he's at his worst when he's playing like this? Like, he chirps at people, like he chirped the Hurricanes on Twitter. They go out and get absolutely killed. You look at, he's preventing Crosby from getting a stick. Like little things like that are funny and stuff, but it feels like he's taking himself off his own game.
Yeah.
And it again, like, in Cassie said this after the game, like Marchand's a leader on this team. Like if this was 2011 Marchand, like fine, you expect it. But
Mhm.
this is the team's MVP. This is the primary scorer. This is the guy on this team, and he's probably out the next at least 5 games. Now, I did see some counterpoints on Twitter. Bruins Stats tweeted Marchand getting time off during a brutal stretch of games when a playoff spot is already locked up and the Bruins acting like assholes again. As long as Bergeron is okay, this is the best we should be feeling about this team so far. Fuck everyone else. So this kind of goes to that whole
I like how it ended on that note too.
yeah, just like, you know what? Fuck everyone else. But I've been hearing this crowd kind of being like, well, the Bruins aren't tough enough, and this shows. But like, they lost. Like they lost the game. And you're right that a playoff spot is probably locked up, but you don't know. Especially you don't know how long Bergeron's out for. I don't know. I mean, was the big bad Bruins of the 2010, 11 that time fun? Yes, but I don't know if that works in this league anymore. Like that's sort of the issue. Is like doing stuff like that is cool in the moment and like assert your toughness. But the Penguins won, and you're without Marchand for the next 5, 6 games, probably
And
7. I mean, I don't even know.
it was in a garbage time stretch in a regular season game in February, right? Like it's not
Yes.
like there's like the Lucic trucking over Ryan Miller or Martian using one of the Sedins like a punching bag, and those things where it's just funny in that situation. It's in the playoffs too, so they're not going to like suspend him for that. But you look at just reading the room or just the situation of this team and the state of where they're at, where you don't know if Bergeron's going to be back. And again, yeah, they can kind of cruise through this stretch if you want to say that, because they've got a pretty big gap between them and teams like Detroit and the Islanders. But you also want this team to start feeling good about its game. And now you've got a situation where you're handing the keys over to Swayman and Olmark. You'd like for them to play better, and at the very least, if they're rolling through some of the ups and downs, at least getting wins along the way. Like it's one thing if like Swayman's playing well and turns a corner, but if he's still losing like 2-1 games because your top lines 2/3 of it's out of commission, it's not helping you that much, right? Like you still want to start feeling better about your game, and now not just the fact that you're without your top 2 forwards on that top line, but now the whole rest of the domino effect is you've got guys all out of order. We don't know whether is Jack Sneaka going to get called up? Is it, Curtis Lazar moved to center where, you're going to be rolling out a lineup for the next little while that is not going to be what you hope is the finished product by the time you get to the playoffs. So whether it's a guy like Coyle who's going to be yanked across the lineup now, or the fourth line that's not getting chemistry, you don't know where like a guy like Nick Foligno fits into like all these guys are now just thrown all over the depth chart when you're getting to the point of the season where yes, you've got a bit of a gap now, but you still want to start putting the plan in motion as to what your roster wants to look like by the time you get to the playoffs. And right now they're in limbo, I guess is the way you put it. They're at the very least they're just going to be treading water for the next week plus, I would say. So not
And
great.
they've got a rough schedule coming up. I also think
Carolina's
the other
coming to town. Not great.
yeah. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe the first line they wouldn't have won that game anyway. But still, I also think you hit the nail on the head with these guys need chemistry.
Mhm.
Like Nick Foligno doesn't really have a consistent lineup spot. The fourth line's been jumbled a bunch. Coyle's been kind of different spots. Eric Hall has been up here, there. No sex, same thing.
Jake DeBrusk has not been traded yet. It's been legitimately 2 months now, and he's still here. And
And
like,
we have not
and
heard
they,
from
they
him yet.
and they kind of need him now
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like,
I mean, that's
again,
like again, and to see this out of a leader in this situation, not the greatest thing in the world. Also, like really dirty, going to the other team's goalie. I don't know, kind of opens up your goalie to stuff. Granted, the game was over, but still, not great.
just needs
Big
to be
difference
better.
between
Just needs to be better.
yes, yes, big difference between punching a player and punching a team's goalie. I don't really care what he said to you. I remember Marchand supposedly said something about like Russia to Panarin. He just threw his glove at him. Like maybe Marchand just should have thrown his glove at Jarry. Just his helmet was already off. Might as well just throw everything at him. But yeah, tough night for 63. Weird with that. Not great to see that just kind of continuing. But anyways, he's probably out for quite a bit of time. Maybe, hey, rest is never a bad thing. Get some rest.
Heal that shoulder up a little bit more.
What was one of your predictions? 100 points for Marchand, and you were like, well, you wrote something like, well, he's not going to hit it, but like if he goes on a real tear, he might be able to. I think that might be.
It might be out of the question, though. I said Pasta could contend for if he's on one of his hot streaks, and looking pretty good right now. Even though we'll see what that power play looks like on Thursday.
Could be playing with Nosek and Lee Stempniak.
Yeah, exactly. Bring back Lee.
Yeah, bring back Lee for this. And final thing on today's agenda. Today's very positive episode.
Yeah.
Good things, only good things. Patrice Bergeron most likely out for a bit with a concussion. Has the concussion been confirmed?
Bruce Cassidy pretty much said that it's upper body involving his head, and he mentioned yesterday concussion spotter. Again, 2 and 2 together.
And we know how Cassidy is with like these kinds of things. He's sitting there just like, don't say concussion, don't say concussion, don't say concussion. Yes. Concussion. Yes. It's like, that's coming next. But you have Bergeron out who's had a well-known history of concussions in his career, now out for probably a bit. So now you're without Marchand and Bergeron for not like 1 or 2 games, but could potentially be like over 5. You're going to have, first line of Coyle, Pastrnak, and Hall, and then a second line of Holla, DeBrusk, and Craig Smith, and like you got a weird thrown together lineup. But this Bergeron thing, he's up at the end of the year with a contract.
It's not great, Evan. I mean, in the short term, it's awful, especially considering you're probably going to be without Marchand. So we've already covered that of not just 2/3 of your top lines out of commission, but also the domino effect is just throwing everyone kind of in a state of limbo where you don't really know where guys are going to be slotted in. So that's awful. But then long term, I mean, this is a guy who's had plenty of mileage over the course of his career, has had multiple issues with concussions in the past. So if you're Bergeron and you're taking a long look at the end of this year, whether you want to keep on doing this for another year or two, and you're prioritizing your health and, being with your family and all these things, fighting through another concussion at this point of his career, it's not great. It's Bergeron still playing at an elite level. He's still probably the favorite to win the Selke again. Hopefully he actually gets put on the ballot this time by a few people, but it's still a legit, franchise center. He's playing like that, but even if his game is not slipped, if you're Bergeron, who's said multiple times that, you prioritize, your health above all at this point, you have to take a long look at it as to whether or not a thing like this, which was just an unfortunate kind of awkward fall into the boards, puts him on the shelf. Something that I think it absolutely creeps in the back of your mind when you have to start weighing those tough decisions about what the next step is moving forward. So again, not a lot of positives take out of the last 24 hours at all. After starting the day with, the Bruins are back from the All-Star break, everyone's healthy, we'll see what happens with Rask. Maybe he's back. Oh, he's not. Okay. And then it just went downhill from there. So not great.
Rough Tuesday in the land of the Bruins. But yeah, I mean, again, I think this guy's got 3 kids. He wants to be there for them. He wants to be healthy. I think, part of it might be seeing what Rask is doing and being like, you know what? Rask has, tried to come back from an injury. Granted, Rask was fixable. You can't have a surgery to repair concussions. But still, it's like, well, he's won a cup. He's had tons of success. He's a legend. He'll get his number retired here. I mean, he's Hall of Famer, all those things. And yeah, I mean, I don't know which way he's leaning on this. I think it's tough to tell. I think he's going to evaluate all those things. I wouldn't be surprised to see him do a year-to-year thing. But I don't know.
Does not help the case in terms of coming back if these issues still keep on sprouting up, which is unfortunate. But it's a very real issue.
And we've said this all year. Again, if he gets injured multiple times this year or at all, that's going to hurt his desire to come back, as it would for anybody, right? If you're 30, he was 37 or 36?
Yes, 36.
37. He's 36. So again, you're at that stage of your career. Do you really want to keep throwing yourself out there, putting yourself on the line like that? I don't know. And it comes back to this. And we didn't really plan on talking about this, but we can just kind of hit on it quick because I know leave a lasting impact on the listeners. But Bergeron gone. Oh no! Wait a second. Whoa, that came out of the mouth way too quickly.
It's gonna be clipped like
Bergeron.
that.
If Bergeron is gone, you also have Rask probably gone. Do you think you might be headed for rebuild?
It's a pretty scary premonition of what you saw at the end of that game and what the next few games could look like. So for the Bruins, it's I don't know if losing a setback with Rask in terms of that again low risk high reward situation not working out and Bergeron missing a few games is all of a sudden going to just tilt the direction of the team into a rebuild as opposed to a retool. Like I still think they're looking at probably acquiring a 2C and forging ahead like that. But who knows if all of a sudden Bergeron is out for a really extended stretch or everything else kind of falls apart and all of a sudden a team like the Islanders catch up to them, then maybe you have to weigh that hard, the hard truth of maybe where you're at and how multiple things just didn't go your way this year. But they haven't hit that point yet. But in terms of just the optics of it, yeah, it's pretty scary to see, a roster that's not at least anchored by one of Rask or Bergeron in their respective spots on the depth chart.
Yep, not great. Not great at all. But what is great is your coverage over at Boston Sports Journal. What can people look forward to over there?
Well, Evan, it's a lot of news to digest, so we'll have you covered all throughout this week in terms of Rask situation, next steps, Marchand situation, Bergeron situation, all that stuff over at BSJ. So subscribe to BostonSportsJournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You poke the bear, listeners. Have a great rest of your day.